Okay. So today on All the Things with Ashley, we are interviewing Mr. Dave Rike of Skyward RX, and he's also going to talk with us about a product named Dozee. I had the opportunity to meet Dave after having a conversation with John Guys. And shout out to John, he is a great connector. I got on the call with Dave and John, and Dave started mentioning all of these great items and things that he's doing. And I might ask him to touch on the 125 plan while we're in here. But he started talking about Dozee, and my little nerd brain just went crazy. So Dave is here to talk about the Dozee products and to give us insight into his own service, which is Skyward RX. So I am going to give Dave the floor right now to introduce himself, tell us his background so that we can get to know him a little bit better. And then I'll ask a couple questions so that we can know how the Dozee products could work for our loved ones or even in our facilities. All right, Dave.
Well, my name is Dave Wright. I'm the co-founder and chief revenue officer for Skyward RX. I've been in the healthcare business for probably about 15 years now. I originally started off in supply chain years ago, worked in the grocery industry and connected most of the major grocery retailers' supply chains, then worked with the automotive industry for the Japanese, and then moved to healthcare. So Skyward is really developed around solving healthcare challenges. We have a lot of folks that come to us with very unique propositions. They're trying to fix an issue that exists in our society, and they come to us to have a creative way to do that. So that's what we come up with. In relation to Dozee specifically, Dozee was developed initially around taking care of our commander-in-chief. So the first application of that was for Air Force One and Marine One to be able to monitor the vitals of the President of the United States. The challenge is that if you're on an airplane or a helicopter or anything like that, there is other noise that's coming in. So while I'm monitoring something through a device, there's other interferences that are coming. And in order to get a truly accurate reading, you need to have AI and other technology built in behind the scenes to really clean that up. So what we did was we have a product here now that has AI built into the analysis of it. The Dozee bed is essentially a pad that goes underneath the bed. Then when the patient is laying on the bed, the pad will then monitor their vitals in real time. So it has blood pulse rates, blood oxygen levels, heart rate, breathing rates, fall detection, a variety of other things like that we're capturing on an ongoing basis throughout the day, anytime that patient is in bed. We then take those vitals and we pipe those all to a dashboard so that the nursing station can see every patient all at one time. The challenge becomes really is in spot checks, right? So if you're in the hospital, a nurse is going to come by once an hour, once every so often, and they're going to check your vitals. The challenge becomes is what happens in between those spot checks, because you may look good in spot check 1 and you may look good in spot check 2, but between 1 and 2, what happened? And there may have been code blue instances that happened that threatened the patient's life that nobody captured because it just wasn't being monitored at that point in time. So a lot of the detrimental events that come up in hospitals are a result of not monitoring things continuously. 73% of patients who've died in hospitals were not admitted to critical care after any surgery that they had because they didn't know that they needed it. But because they were only spot checking. So this is a way for us to then have that data on an accurate basis, real time. The beds are cellularized, so we don't have to have them connected to Wi-Fi. They use an LTE signal, like a cell phone, which makes it a lot easier for us to be able to connect them. It also gives us a lot more deployment options. So this is good for not just, a hospital, but it could be a long-term care facility. It could be a an elderly community. It could be a at-home care. And even in an at-home care situation, because it's syncing that data up to the cloud so the doctors can monitor that, we're watching the patients on a real-time basis.
So you mentioned that this can be used in assisted living, long-term care. That would include also maybe the residential types.
Absolutely.
Because based on what I'm hearing, it's not just the actual bed that you can purchase. There's also another device that you can add to an existing bed. Could you explain that and then give any parameters for what the bed would need to be in order to use it in an in-home or a residential placement?
Can actually be used with any bed. The actual Dozee bed itself is not an actual bed per se.
Okay.
It is a pad that lays on top of the bed.
Okay.
So the patient's going to be laying, they can put it under their sheets and under those kinds of things so that, you're not going to feel it when you're laying there on it. But as the patient lays down on it, then we're actually getting real-time signals then through the mattress and everything on the patient. So it allows us to monitor that. So you can use it at home. You can put it on your regular bed at home. If they have like assisted living where you have a mixture of adults that are staying there, some that are coming and going and living normal, regular lives, others that may be more bedridden and that kind of thing. Both applications currently apply. And that's one of the things that we're seeing, especially in assisted living and long-term care, is a lot of facilities like this because it's a way to ensure that the loved one that's staying there is actually being cared for on a regular basis. One of the things that we see is that if a patient has to leave long-term care or residential care like that and goes to the hospital because of a medical condition, many times they won't come back to that same facility that they were staying at before, not because of any other reason other than their family's going to get involved and say, hey, they weren't watching you well enough and you got sick and had to go to the hospital. We need to get you into a place that's going to monitor you more closely. So this is advantageous for those type of facilities to show that, they're really taking top level care of their residents.
With that being said, what for those people who may be interested in this for their own homes or again, their residential types, what is the cost to the person that is using the device?
So there are two ways that we deploy the solution itself. One is that if the person or facility wants to buy it, we'll sell it outright, and they can buy it. They can buy an extended warranty and all that kind of good thing. For a facility, I'll set the individual aside for just a second, but for a facility, the facility, if they purchase it, there are remote patient monitoring CPT codes that their doctors will be able to evaluate the results of the monitoring and then bill against those CPT codes against insurance. So there is recurring billing that happens as a result of that if they purchase it. The other option is that many facilities, depending on how many beds they have and those kinds of things, may not have the money just to come up and just, lump that out at one time. So for those, we'll actually put the beds in at no cost. And then our doctors monitor that, and then we do that billing, and we're able to make our money that way. Okay. So it's either we sell it or we put it in at no cost. We just had an adult home for mentally challenged folks that's putting it in North Carolina. And we're just putting the beds in there for them so that they can use that to help monitor the patients that they're caring for every day.
Very cool.
We're doing the remote monitoring.
So from any perspective, it can benefit the business that is operating that facility. Absolutely. Either way, because at the end of the day, you are still getting the vitals in a continuous manner to ensure that the residents are being cared for well and that you can anticipate what needs might be coming. And I think that's a lot of the issues that present themselves when it comes to resident care in assisted living, especially the small type. One, the staffing is not always there. There's a staffing shortage across the board for most facilities. But also just being able to sometimes anticipate and prepare for a need can create less chaos when an emergency pops up. And having that ability to prepare is a game changer for the smaller facilities, because I think of it as, if I'm an owner or a manager of a facility and I'm not on duty that day, I can still log in and look and see what's going on with the residents to the,
Absolutely.
if I need to send more nursing, or do I need to find a PRN to come help alleviate staff. I imagine how it helps you make quick and on the spot decisions to prevent fallout down the line.
Absolutely. Having this data in real time is paramount for patient care. It also saves nurses time, right? Because now I don't have to go down, if I have 100 residents, I don't have to go through 100 different rooms and take vitals for them and then start again and redo that every so often. I'm going to have a dashboard that's going to see it at all time. If I have an issue, I know it. It's going to highlight it in red and say, warning bells will go off that I need to go check on Jane Doe down the road, here in room number 22 or whatever it happens to be. That way I know. The other thing that we're also working on now that we'll have coming out later in 2025, we have heat maps for those that don't move around in the bed very much. So we want to avoid blood clots, and we want to be able to, warn nurses that, hey, let's get that patient up and move them around a little bit. The other is wetness detection. If for some reason that they urinated on themselves because they can't get out of bed, that will detect that. It will notify the nurses station. It sets a timer so that we can then start tracking times to make sure that that patient is changed and the sheets are done and all that kind of good stuff. Because many times a nurse may come in, and if they're just taking their oxygen and their blood pressure and stuff, they're not necessarily going to think to look every single time. And so there's missed opportunities there that leads to uncomfort and everything else.
Yes, look, leads to pressure ulcers, UTIs, amongst other
Yes,
things. Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there is a preventative measure to this. There's a proactive measure to this. There is staffing. I'm sure if we were to go down to the minutia, you could go and look at how this affects your financial bottom line.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure we could drive it all the way down to that.
yeah. To the
And then number of lives saved. I mean, we've saved over 25,000 lives to date.
Wow.
14 million nursing hours saved. I mean, we've got some pretty impressive stats. The largest hospital in the world, which is not in the United States, is actually using this in all of their beds. The country of India kept this technology and paid an exclusive for it during COVID because they were experiencing such good results and patient care that they wanted to make sure that they never ran in shortage of it.
Wow.
So if they needed more beds, they had more Dozee beds to go with it, right? And the nice thing is that because this isn't a full bed, right? You can retrofit any bed that you have. So I'm not asking somebody to go out and buy a $30,000, Hill-Rom or Stryker bed that happens to have technology built into it. This is something that can be used literally with what they have in place today.
Okay. In my nerdy girl, because I have that part of me, I was looking up that this is ballistocardiography, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So it's different from electrocardiography in that you don't have to actually have anything attached to the person's body. The person literally can just lay on the bed or the mat.
Completely contactless. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we have other things that can be connected in remotely, for like temperature. If you're going to take their temperature, there's a wireless one. You can do it and it'll just sync with the bed. Non-invasive blood pressure monitors, things like that. But yeah, everything else is contactless: heart rate, respiration rate, non-contact blood pressure, bed occupancy, fall detection, those kinds of things are
Okay.
all built in.
Okay. Cool. Now, tell me this. Meaning that you're gathering all of this data, and we are in the world of hackers and cybersecurity being a major thing. How are you protecting people's HIPAA rights? How are you protecting people's privacy?
We have data centers around the world that are all HIPAA secure, SOC compliant. We have all the security regulations around all of that. We don't sell the data. We're not using it for anything else. This is really purely for patient care. But we're using this in some of the largest hospitals in the entire world.
I love to hear that we don't sell the data. I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
There's
Yeah.
too many people out here, that are trying to profit off of patient data and aggregated patient data and things like that. And it's just, we care about patient care. We care about good outcomes. Um, I'm not interested in monetizing data. That's not.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like in some ways, some of the services we have are great, but the intentionality behind them and what it does to the people after it's in place
Mhm.
negates what you meant for good. So I appreciate you having that stance and your company having that stance.
Yeah, the only time that, like in our world, we do mental health testing and other kinds of things like that.
Mhm.
And in some cases, it's good to aggregate that for a particular population, just so you know the severity levels of particular things. Outside of that, we're not selling it. We're just showing it back to that community that says, hey, you have a homeless population in X city, right? 70% of them have mental health issues.
Yep.
Right? That would be a good thing to know, because then at least now this is a big problem, we have to address it. Outside of those kinds of things, that's really the only thing we're looking at.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, so you were saying something about the Dozee having an alarm. And I know and have noticed, I'm a former surveyor, so I've been in nursing home after nursing home, assisted living after assisted living facility, and then being in the hospital with family and noticing how when those alarms go off, sometimes the nurses or the staff are like, yo, we already got 17 other things going on. How does having that alarm affect staff, positive, negative, or somewhere in between?
It's been a good thing for us, and the reason being is that because we're lessening the load on them of having to do rounds on a regular basis to do all these spot check vitals, that frees up some extra time. So if I have more staff that I don't have just literally making rounds,
Mhm.
then I've got more people that can address the big issues, right? And no news is good news type of thing, right? So if I'm not going to have alarms going off, everybody's in a good state of mind, good state of body, and all that kind of good thing, right? So everybody's doing okay. It's when things go wrong that we need to start managing it. And so if we start seeing something go south, the alternative effect is that you did spot checks, something went south, you didn't know it until it was too late, right? So the fact that we're able to catch it at that point in time makes it a higher priority for them. And since we're saving them so much time in other places, it's not a drag on them to like, oh gosh, now I got to go check on, Jane Doe or John Doe or whatever over here because, I've got all these 50 other things I got to do. Well, I just freed up 3 hours of your day that you didn't have to walk around and say, okay, let's take your temperature. Okay, let's take your blood pressure. Okay, what's your oxygen? Put it on your finger. All those kinds of things.
Yeah.
All of that time saved adds up.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't want to say that those aren't important things that they're doing, because they are. But if we can do them systematically now, right, we're still gathering that same data. We're gathering it more often, more regularly, and then they don't have to do it.
Right. What's the accuracy rate?
Oh, it's 90, 98, 99%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We have the ability to filter out vibrations, other things. So if there's, a machine that's in the next room and it's, you know, it's shaking the room and everything, it's not going to throw our readings and that kind of thing off.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
We even had the ability that if it was a pregnant mom, as an example, you know, we can tell the difference between the baby's heartbeat and the mom's heartbeat.
Okay. How cool. Like my brain was focused in on like long-term care, but that just opened my mind even more.
Yeah,
The uses are really uncounted. Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
it's, you know, it's we have the ability to even integrate AI wellness coaching. So we have an app that the data can be fed back to. If let's say you're in a assisted living, right? Not necessarily long-term care, but assisted living where you're going out and about and doing your daily things, right? Well, it's monitoring you. Well, if it catches and notices that, you know, you've got some issues with your blood pressure, or with your heart rates, or with your oxygens, or whatever, right? It's going to feed that back to this AI model that sits on your phone. And there's an avatar that'll talk to you. And it'll say, hey, Ashley, you know, I noticed yesterday that, you know, when you were asleep last night, that your breathing rates, and let's focus on some of these kinds of things in order to help you, and you'll get a better night's sleep. You'll do this and that. Same kind of thing goes with if they happen to be diabetic, if they happen to be hypertensive, you know, all of those other kinds of things that you would monitor can all be fed back to that to help coach that person to be better. And the nice thing is that we allow for the customization of that coach. And when I say that, like, I always think about like an avatar, you know, and you play a video game, you can make it like a monkey, or you can make it a person, or you can make it a dinosaur or something, right?
Mhm.
Well, the same kind of thing, except for in a real world situation. If I'm an 80-year-old man and I have diabetes and I've got some heart issues and things like that, and this is feeding this information to my AI wellness coach, I may want to talk to another 80-year-old man, right? Because that's who I'm comfortable with. And it's going to communicate with me like another 80-year-old man would be. Now, if I'm a devout Christian, as also, right, I
Mhm.
can make my AI guy a devout Christian also. Or if I'm a Muslim, I can make him a Muslim, you
Okay.
know. And so now, you know, if I can and say like I'm really spiritual, like I'm, you know, a holy roller, and I like to go to church, you know, as many times as I can a week, that kind of thing, right? Well, you know, if I'm not feeling so good, it may say, hey, Dave, you know, you need to cheer up a little bit today. Let me read you a Bible verse,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Little things like that that make it, you know. And then likewise, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're a child, you have childhood diabetes. I'm a 12-year-old little boy. I don't want to talk to some adult about this thing that I don't even really know a whole lot about. Every time they talk to me, they're talking over my head, right? So now I can make my little avatar a 12-year-old little boy or little girl, right? And then communicate with them, and they're going to speak like they're a 12-year-old. They're not going to talk about ballistocardiography and, you know, all that kind of stuff. They're going to be talking like, hey, so you should eat more carrots and you should do that. You know, I mean, like they're going to talk about like those kinds of things that make sense to the person that they're engaging with. So we've really tailored that, whether it's senior care, pregnant care, diabetes, heart disease, you know, so on and so forth, that we can even tie things like that into it.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I would love to see that real time. I would love
Sure.
to.
Oh, I'd love to show you a demo of it. It's
Yeah,
really
absolutely. Okay. So I'm not gonna take up too much more of your time. What I do want you to do is tell people how to reach you, where to find more information about Dozee for those facilities or long-term care owners who may want to reach out to you directly to inquire about obtaining these beds.
sure. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is email. My email is D as in David, and Rike is my last name, Rike. So drike at skywardrx.com. My phone number is 937-789-7201. That's my mobile, so you can text or call me that way. But I'd be happy to help out in any way. Online, the website, I don't know it off the top of my head, to be honest with you, is dozeehealth.ai. So DOZEEHEALTH.ai. So Dozee has got 2 E's. And on that, that's got a lot of the information. We can do demos. We're happy to share information about it and take you through it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so Dave, thank you so much for your time. I
Sure.
really appreciate you explaining this. I think this is something that would be beneficial to my clients who are the small residential types,
Sure.
who may own multiple homes, and this would be a game changer for the type and level of care that they're offering. Um,
Absolutely.
you saw my eyes. I was kind of excited about some of the things you were telling me. The nerd in me was like, "Ooh, I want to try it." So I'm really excited about where this could take the long-term care industry, assisted living, residential care, how this could really benefit those types of facilities and the type of care that they could offer with this information. So I may actually have you back on to do that demo.
Happy to do it anytime.
Yeah, I would love to. Real quick before I let you go, the 125 plan.
Mhm.
I want to have you back on to explain that to people, but
Absolutely.
give me a 60-second or less brief on it.
The quick brief on it is we have a plan for employer groups. Doesn't matter what size your company is. This is not a change to your healthcare. This is an add-on. So whatever healthcare plan you have today, if it's United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, doesn't matter. Any of those are fine. You keep what you have in place today. We add some services on top. Our services, as part of this plan, our biomed plan is no cost to the employer. It is paid through tax savings. So there's actually no net cost to the employees either. And we essentially build in a program that eliminates the cost of generic medications, both for the employer and the employee. It also reduces the cost of the specialty medications, which are what cost employers significantly by a dramatic amount, usually 50+%. So we're able to make a huge dent in the cost of healthcare. Beyond that, they get unlimited telehealth for primary care, urgent care, mental health care, oncology, second opinions. We have precision medicine, which makes us very unique. Our precision medicine process allows us to do a cheek swab, a blood sample, and a skin sample, and we're actually able to look at a patient as an individual. And then we tailor their medications. We're not changing anything, but we tailor those medications to their body. So let's say a medication, it comes in a standard dose of 40 milligrams. After doing this analysis, we find out that genetically and lifestyle and based on how well their body's absorbing medications and so on and so forth, that they don't need 40 milligrams, they only need 22 milligrams. Well, if you continue to give them 40 milligrams, you're going to be over medicating them, which causes them to have to take more medicine for side effects and things like that. So we dial that in. If they only need 22 milligrams, we create a 22 milligram version of that medication for them and we send it to them. So now they have the ideal one for them. And even though they may have a person right next to them that is taking the exact same med, that person's dosage is going to be different because their body's different. So we're personalizing medicine, which used to only be available to the very wealthy for cash pay only. So if you had lots and lots of money, you could do this before. We took that idea and put it into an employer group plan so that everybody benefits from it. So as long as you're an employee at that company, you're eligible for this. Doesn't matter whether you're taking the current healthcare plan from the employer or not. It's something that can be added on. And the employers are saving $600 or around $500 to $800 per employee per year from a tax savings standpoint. And then they have medication savings on top. So if they're self-insured, we're dropping off all costs of generics. So they don't pay for generic medications anymore, and will reduce their specialty med costs by, 30, 40, 50%. So we just had a 310 life employee group that showed savings of around $1.6 million.
Ooh. Okay.
So
All right.
it's really changing the dynamic in healthcare, because I'm not coming in trying to get you to switch from what you have. Whatever you've negotiated, great, keep it. Just add this on top as like icing on the cake, if you will.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have you back on so we can dive into that a little bit deeper and ask some more questions that may be helpful to people who are interested. Okay. But
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time today. Happy holidays to you. And
you.
I look forward to our next meeting because you're bringing some good stuff here, Dave. I feel like we need to have you on every other week.
Hey, happy to do anytime you want, but I really appreciate the time, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Yes,
And
sir.
happy to come back anytime.
All right. Thank you so much.